I want to say thanks everyone for being here.
You like gotcha question? Gotcha question? We are broadcasting live from the Area 17 studio here in a rather sunny day in November in Brooklyn. So welcome. Thanks for joining us today. Today, it's a distinct pleasure to chat about our subject today, which is almost a continuation of what we started in South by Southwest about, hey, what's Gen AI? You know, what are the potential use cases for it? And now that we've had a few months, which has been, it seems like years, in this world of Gen AI, now we wanted to bring on some panelists here and really drive a discussion about what it now means, and some of the conversations you've had with customers. I know I've had a few, yeah, that's the subject that we want to talk to today. So really quickly, just so you know, again, we have the global online audience joining us today, and then a room here of, say, I don't know, 40 people joining us in the studio today. So just be aware that we're running live as well as online. And so for those of you joining for the first time, the SoDA Series Live is a collaboration between Adobe and the Society of Digital Agencies. It's a member-based community for founders. Is it your first time you're hearing this?
Oh, no. You're doing great, Jay.
Thank you. It's a member-based community for founders and leadership teams at some of the most progressive and innovative digital design studios around the globe. Each month, we host a live discussion with creative leaders in the SoDA community and dive into emerging trends, areas of inspiration, lessons learned, and what it means to be a creative and design leader today. So the early PSA there for those that don't know. So speaking with three leaders today from the SoDA community, and before we dive in, I'd love for the panelists to say hello. And so why don't you introduce yourself with your name, role, and a bit about your company. Starting with you.
Sorry, hi. My name is Inamoto. I'm the founding partner of I&CO. We are a global innovation firm based in New York and Tokyo. I call myself a designer, and I started my career about 20 plus years ago. And yeah, I'm very glad to be here.
Awesome. Thanks.
All right, I'm Mike Dobell. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer at Media.Monks. I was a co-founder at Jam3 and have kind of continued that journey through there, working with the innovation team on all the things that are important to our company today and especially tomorrow.
Ooh, that was good.
Thanks.
Well done. I am Michael Lebowitz. I'm not PJ Pereira. For anyone who is expecting PJ Pereira, I apologize. Let's all wish him well. He's not feeling well. So send him chicken soup vibes. I'm Michael Lebowitz. I'm the founder and executive chairman of Big Spaceship. We are a nearly 24-year-old creative firm. I don't know what to call our kind of company anymore. It all seems to fall down if you apply too many or too few words. So we help mostly really large companies do better in the world with people. And that can take many forms. We try our utmost to be output agnostic and really think about people and culture first and foremost. And I'm incredibly excited to have a conversation with three people I've known for a really long time and have tons of respect for.
Awesome, thank you. And I'm Jay Ganadin. I'm Director of Strategic Development on the Adobe Firefly team. As you know, we've had a lot of conversations about AI, so really, really pleased to chat with some agency leaders today about this subject. So diving in, Ray.
Yes.
You recently shared a piece on Medium. Really
Yes,
good work. Hopefully in the chat, someone will post this article. And in it, you called out some of the immediate opportunities and use cases and sort of organize them in this interesting framework of operations versus creation versus transformation.
Yeah.
And how you describe those as sort of new speed for operation, new standards for creation, and new scale for transformation. So I wondered if you could maybe walk us through the framework.
Yeah, so the piece that Jay is referring to is an article that I wrote called How to AI. And as we've started to experiment about a year ago using AI, either for client work and or our own work, we started to notice patterns in terms of different types of AI and different use case scenarios. And just AI is such a loaded term that anything that is remotely algorithmic seems to be referred to as AI. So we thought it was useful, at least for our purposes, to group them into three buckets, three types of AI. As Jay said, one type is what we call operation AI. And I would say the majority of AI tools that we've seen fall into this category of making your operation more efficient and adding more efficiency into the way you do things. And so that's operation AI. And then the creation AI is a type of AI that enables what wasn't possible before. And so for instance, like Adobe Firefly, I would say I would put into that category. So we've seen a lot of movies, traditional movies transformed into say vertical format. So that type of thing is making something that wasn't possible a few years ago possible. And then the last type of AI, which I think is something that I don't think has been explored as much, is transformation AI. And what are the use cases of AI that fundamentally and profoundly changes the way we work and changes the way we interact with the rest of the world. So that's how we categorize AI, just so that when we are talking about AI and specifically Gen AI, we have some framework to refer to.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've seen similar kind of emerging use cases at Adobe. So I love how you structured that. It makes it a kind of really easy way to kind of describe it with your customers.
Sure.
So speaking of new speed, I think that we've had these conversations, Mike, about creating these more efficient pipelines. So wondering, and I know that Media.Monks does a lot of this, right?
Yep.
You've really kind of created a practice around it, and it predates when AI was cool. So would love to kind of hear some of your perspectives on this sort of new speed sort of element.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, content at scale has been a big part of our business for a long time. And whether or not that's been for the purposes of social engagement or just to power your e-commerce efforts, it's been a big part of what we've been doing with brands. Obviously, this is a massively disruptive new tool for us. So I think one of the things to look back at is that, for the past 100 years or so, the spend on advertising has sat pretty flat at like 1.4 to 1.8 of GDP globally. And And the outputs over time have grown, but this essentially is something that is allowing us to see a major step change in the quantity of outputs for the same relative global spend. So the question then becomes, well, how do I manage that? And what we're encountering when we're coming in with customers who want to become AI first and want to go through this journey with us to re-pipeline their organizations is just seeing how much of the past decade of digital transformation hasn't been finished, or has been done poorly, or has been done ad hoc. And when you see that the average tenureship of a CMO is something like 2 years, they all come in with a new tool, or it's an opportunity for all those directors to introduce that tool to that new CMO. And so what you end up with is this like aggregation of tools, like the bottom of the seafloor, and you can't run on the bottom of the seafloor, right? So we often come in the companies like excited to use Gen AI to like up their image creation game, and usually the first order of business is data foundations and workflowing their tools properly, creating custom automations, bringing in enterprise implementations. And really those three things, the data foundations, the automations, the custom tools, and the enterprise implementations, doing that properly allows that management and the uptake of that volume opportunity. A lot of organizations have people in them that are playing with AI tools, whether they're large language models or image models, and their often complaint is like, they're doing this work, but it's hard to capture the value. It just gets squishy. They're like squishy gains, and the value is getting captured either by the employee who is doing 8 hours of work in 4 hours, and so the employee is capturing the value, or they're doing twice as much work but it's creating bottlenecks elsewhere in the organization. So working that out with them is a big part of what we're all about. I don't know what else to say on that. It's worth. There's a favorite sort of Adam Smith quote that I come back to, which is that the sole purpose of production is consumption, and this is a time where we've uncapped things, and so working out how do we produce today is how we will create new volumes of consumption by our customers, the agency's customers, so that they can address levels of personalization that create consumption for them as a result.
Love it. And I mean, we just wrote an article with Michael on Little Black Book, and he's I always appreciate your perspectives coming from the economist. So yeah, I
slightly
appreciate
addicted.
those. Yeah. So Michael, like, how are you kind of seeing either this framework play out of typical use cases? I mean, we're talking, in the one hand, Michael talking about how to figure out better ways of working through production.
Mm-hmm.
How are you seeing it? I mean, having, I think I'll date myself. I'll say, like, I've seen these sort of revolutions in our work with web, and then maybe seeing it with mobile. Now we're seeing it with generative AI. You've had a practice in all of these sort of trenches in the business. Yeah. Maybe tell us about this new one for you.
Yeah, well, I think all of us have been around long enough to see that the exact same set of initial behaviors happens every time. Mm-hmm. Shiny object syndrome, I'm going to make it just because I can syndrome, like all of that stuff. People adding AI to a product in the name of a product that already existed just to increase their chances of getting some attention or funding or whatever. We've seen that over and over and over again. So it feels familiar, but then at the same time, when I think about the rate of change that we've seen as a result, particularly with the large language models, it feels decidedly different. I loved what Wes said, his colleague. He said, this is the worst that Gen AI will ever be.
Right.
And you can keep saying that like week after week, and it actually makes a difference. You know, there's so much attention on it, and it's advancing at such a rate. So the knocks against it are getting out of the way faster. I think, and I'm sure we'll talk about it in more detail, there's things outside of the technology and tool themselves that are going to be harder to get out of the way quickly, legal, issues and such like. So my approach to it is, I haven't applied Ray's very thoughtful categories to it, but I think you have to start thinking about it in a very broad way. You can't, unless you are someone who's able to go in and tune a model yourself and go very deep. For me, it's about how broad can we look at this, because it's not the kind of change that a single department is going to solve for a company. And we've seen this, mobile departments when every year was the year of mobile until it finally was. And then there was a mobile department, and they had really smart mobile thinkers in there, but the department didn't interface with the rest of the organization, but mobile was the primary interface for the customer. So there was a huge sort of dissonance there. And this is going to be no different. This is not the kind of thing that you can hire a bunch of clever people, put them in a silo, and hope, and it'll get you through it. So I sort of think about it as like, how do we get everyone in our organization discussing it? Those that are most likely to discuss it, you have to nudge them a lot less. But everybody has to start thinking in terms of what are our opportunities, what's possible, and just starting to feel a comfort level with it. And you do that a lot of different ways. We're doing Firefly immersion for the whole company, and some of the team really don't need it. I don't think I need it. I'm still going to attend, but it's really important, whether you're going to be inside of a Creative Suite product or not, to see what the world can do now. Yeah. Because I think that level sets thinking, and once you get everybody at sort of a common level of thinking, then all of the collaborative practices that are the lifeblood of an agency can continue forward in approximate lockstep, which is essential. And we can't get that to happen for our clients necessarily. So it's even more incumbent on us that we are able to come to the table with proposals for how to help them think about it more holistically. Because otherwise you're going to solve one problem, and it's not really going to be, it's going to feel like a great solution by one measure, one KPI, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not really making an impact until it's been kind of thought through, I think, across all your categories.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, you're sort of thinking of this as a holistic, I mean, it aligns with what our thinking is on how AI becomes part of creative workflows, right?
Absolutely.
And it's not one sort of particular application to a skill. It's maybe looking at what the end result is, and then using AI to kind of assist you through that. So I absolutely agree, and it's interesting too. We'll cover this in a moment, but some of the impacts that you're seeing internally in your organization, and getting them to voice themselves more about it.
Yeah, it's sort of like, what's your AI strategy is a question that is surely being asked in boardrooms around the world, and it's the wrong question.
Right.
The same way, what's your mobile strategy wasn't the right question. It's, what's your strategy? That should remain until there's a good reason to change it. And then how is this new change in the world going to alter it, alter your aperture on that strategy and alter your approach to it. And I think we all just get very, very excited about new things. And then there's the keeping up with the Joneses part of like, oh, well, I heard they have an AI strategy, so we better have an AI strategy.
Definitely. So one of the things, pivoting a little bit, and maybe this is also a dated term, but personalization, right? Like there's this idea now that because we're able to create content at scale, is personalization at scale, and that sort of unrealized opportunity now truly an opportunity for customers and your clients. So, and this is something that maybe is truly transformative, right? So what are your thoughts on, the sort of potential of personalization at scale with AI? Yes.
Sure. Yeah. Depending on how you look at it, I think personalization can be super powerful. I had an interesting conversation recently with a global apparel brand, and we're talking about AI. Actually, it was a specific conversation about AI, and the CEO said personalization is useless, and I was actually really surprised by it. And I think that when it comes to delivering information that should be specific to an individual. So let's say like you're sending a newsletter to 1 million people, and if you're sending a newsletter that contains 90% of products that are not relevant to that individual, then the personalization can be useful. But at the same time, I think if you are a type of brand that should be part of culture, I think I'm still forming my opinion on this, but I think that personalization can be really boring. I remember like 15 years ago when YouTube became more personalized. Before personalization on YouTube, I used to get a feed of videos that weren't personalized to me. So I was finding videos that I wouldn't normally watch. But like I distinctly remember, I think like it was maybe around 2006 or 2007 when my YouTube feed changed to be more personalized. So all of a sudden, my feed was filled with all the videos that look like the videos that I had already watched. And I had to try much harder to find things that were not the usual things that I would watch. So in that perspective, part of me thinks that like personalization is a scheme for big platforms to trap people into spending more time, but it doesn't actually help you find new unexpected things. Like it will help you find expected things. But so if you're a brand, I think like the majority of the conversation that I notice online these days as it relates to personalization and AI is this excitement. Oh, you know what? Like this hyper personalization is now possible. But I will be really cautious about chasing that shiny object, like you said, because I think it could lead to a very boring future.
Well, it depends also on how we define, we define personalization and what people are aware of based on what was possible in a prior era. And so, and we've all gotten an email that says dear name and things like that, and that's a fail. But to your point, Ray, we got stuck in our algorithms, and then all new tools were being developed to help us dig out of our algorithms and discover things. And to me, it's really because it wasn't really personalized. It was personalized based on really blunt force data, like demographic information. Like you might know this much about me, but you don't know how I feel. You don't know how I am in any given moment. And what I think the promise is, and I'm not sure I would apply the term personalization to this, but maybe it's like a whole new category of experience where, I'm sure everybody's seen in SaaS software products, it started, I think, with Superhuman, the email thing, to have a quick launch bar, or there's standalone versions like Raycast, which I use constantly, and things like that. If you have a quick launch, a keyboard command or a Hey Siri or whatever that might be, but the response is universal and not confined to the application, right? This is the promise of everything being in the cloud and everything being connected. If I can say, I feel like watching a video, I'm not going to YouTube and hoping that I don't get overly caught in the algorithm or I can hit the search term just right. It's like, you are getting to know me, system, whatever the system is, you're getting to know me, and I'm like, hey, I need to be cheered up. I want to watch some sort of like timeline cleansing video. Give me funny cat videos immediately, that kind of thing. But the content we get should be based on what we want, and it hasn't been that way at all. It's been almost that, and that's almost like the uncanny valley. Like, it's worse, to your point, Ray. Like, I'd rather just be thrown a bunch of stuff that lots of people think is good than things that seem like they might be interesting to me but aren't.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you're both making this same point. Personalization sucks, and as it's been done so
Thanks for breaking it
far, yeah, I know. Right? To summarize, but like when you I was also chatting with a fashion retailer recently, and it's crazy how siloed their data is. Like, they're not applying all this rich information that they have about their customers to their PDP pages.
Right.
So they're not actually customizing what you see or sequencing the apparel recommendations in the same way that they can do in the store with their merchandise managers. Like, I mean, it's been an art of the merchandise manager for many decades to place those nice tank tops next to the expensive jeans, and they sell together. And they understand that. So, these systems are starting to allow the kind of application of that knowledge and that like what we would call instinct or professional expertise into these digital systems. And I think there's actually quite a lot of promise around that within commerce. And I think within like display and performance media, like that's a game of catch up right now. Like they're barely meeting the need. Like there's almost no personalization happening there because of how long it takes to create a particular asset. Like I was at an FMCG company. It took them 13 weeks to get an image onto a PDP page, which is an astounding amount of time. And it's because of just a complete disconnection along the way. And so when you resolve that, then you can start doing personalization, and then we can judge its outcomes. And then we can start saying, okay, well, we're giving you sea of sameness, or we're going to start mucking with the unexpected and really start to get clever about that, because we're freeing up those people to do those higher level activities, which I think is where it starts to get really, really exciting, and what we're starting to see happening.
Yeah.
Speaking of commerce, just to comment on that, and you mentioned about merchandising in store, but speaking of a store, on an online store versus a physical store is probably the least personalized space, right? Everything is merchandised according to the way the brand, the company thought it should be merchandised. Yet people buy 4 times as much as they would online. Mm-hmm. They discover more stuff in this really not personalized space versus like if you go to an online store, it can be perfectly personalized for you, and it could be displaying only the things that you'd be interested in. But the reality, when people shop in a physical store, they buy more stuff because they discover more stuff and they are inspired to do the shopping, So
That's interesting.
Yeah, so I think that's one way to look at personalization. Is it a good thing? Maybe in certain extent, but I don't think it actually helps business as much as, no offense to Adobe, but tech companies say that they do.
Yeah. Well, and I didn't know I needed some jeans and a tank top. So
we'll go shopping together later.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks for the power of suggestion. I think certainly there's, if we think about even just prompting in generative AI, where you can have we had this interesting use case about maybe using culture as a means to help with this sort of discovery and personalization in a sort of category, at a category level, versus maybe individual, to help with this sort of thing that the concepts that you guys are pointing to. So one of the things too that we've also heard from customers is, okay, so now that we have the sort of content explosion and a way to address it, now we actually might have more of a content problem, right? Like where does it go? Like, how do we collaborate on it? How do we review it? All of these kinds of things. Like, how are you as agency owners and leaders sort of addressing collaboration with the explosion of content and the ability to create content, both internally with your teams and then with your clients?
Yep. I mean, I think there's sort of two things. One is something you touched on, which is tool adoption. So, I mean, we have a team that is about tool adoption, and that crosses over like what's available. You should use it. Here's how you use it. Legal restrictions. Use it for this. Don't use it for that. That sort of thing. So that's just an overall work stream that has to be undertaken. Mm-hmm. And then the other work stream is one of workflowing, and that's the prevention of new bottlenecks. That's the automation between tools. You don't want to create thousands of new assets that end up in a box drive for somebody to download and then to import into a spreadsheet to hit approve 7 times. Like, you have to work all that stuff through. Those are two really, really big things to get right, and it requires a lot of dedicated effort to get it right.
Sure.
It's been a big effort this year.
Indeed. In a matter of months, right?
Yep. Yeah. No,
I totally agree with that. I think the other part of it is questioning a lot of assumptions that accrue over time. Does the customer, the people out there in the world, really have a voracious appetite for more and more and more content? Or is that the aggregation of suggestions by every single platform because they want more and more content pushed through it? And at what point does the level of value dwindle by being sort of diluted across all of these platforms ever emerging, to the point where it's no longer worth the investment? So, it's like, when do you go in? We used to advise our clients, like, don't go in without a plan. You don't just like walk into a party, change the music and start talking about yourself, right? Which is what brands were doing when we had these. But now it's like, now you figured it out and you're trying to behave like a good citizen, but you can't just like walk out of the party. So like, you have to be really thoughtful about this and how you commit your time and resource to it. And so it's not that you're wrong in the slightest, but like I guess I'm getting to a place where I'm starting to question: do we really want this much content? Do we really think it's all content, or is a lot of it just ads? Yeah. And those should have their place in their context and be clear, and there should be a value exchange associated with them, like there always should have been. And and let's not conflate these things or make assumptions based on bad data.
Yeah, absolutely.
Totally. I mean, I think I would say yes, but not yet.
Yes, and?
Well, yes, we were yes-anding all week.
We've been yes-anding for quite a while.
But it's, no, I mean, I think at least what we're hearing from marketers is they're like, they feel like they're not meeting the needs. They're not yet doing even the basic level that they would like to be offering to their customers in terms of personalization, customization, hitting those audience affinities with a little bit more accuracy, so that they can then fine tune and make adjustments and learn and do a better job of what they're doing. They're like a many, not all, are just getting it out the door at a basic level. I mean, broadcasters still use Nielsen ratings.
Oh yeah.
Like, sorry, I may not be allowed to say that, but like, that's crazy.
We'll bleep it.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, like it's. I mean, it's such coarse information compared to what we can do in a fine-tuned manner. And I mean, sure, we'll hit a ceiling where, okay, that's enough. Like that's where that curve of effectiveness rolls off. But we're not at a place yet where we can say that the cost per unit of production doesn't merit creating more of it.
Don't you think that there's going to be a point? Sorry, I'm asking a question.
Yeah.
I'm actually really curious for your guys' opinion of this. Like, don't you think we're going to hit a point before there where the AI will be good enough to be able to say, like, don't mess with this, that's brand, whatever, and all of these assets are going to be able to be created on demand by the system without ever having any human intervention?
Totally. Yeah, I mean, we're building.
Mike, we're there.
Yeah.
We're kind of there. We're there in pieces.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and this is sort of the realm of how do you improve generative AI, not through automated means, right? But because there's a lot of models there, companies like Adobe and Google and Meta, who use human intervention. So every time you thumbs up, thumbs down an image that comes back, right, that's being used to help improve the model, right? So human intervention, clearly, definitely something that's still part of the equation. In fact, that's how when GPT-4 came out, it had a lot of it took a lot of the feedback from 3.5 to make much more accurate GPT-4. So absolutely getting human interaction in there is a piece of it.
I would just add a bit as well, but like when we think about like Adobe Substance workflows, if you've seen what's happening in e-commerce with 3D rendered product shots, the personalization that's happening there is not so much like, hey, this person, this color for this demographic. It's things like, oh, we can now render it from various degrees at various camera angles. Oh, and this one's getting more click-through. So that's like, that's an ability to test at a whole new level. It's like personalization, but it's personalization for the brand to show that product at the correct angle that gets the outcome that they're looking for. And that's a thing that's only just getting started in a major way, like, which I think is really
I mean, it's a great point, right? I mean, it's same image, different angles, right? That's generating more interaction.
Yeah. And that that might be an Adobe Substance workflow rather than a generative AI one, but I think all of this stuff has to sort of sit within the context of the fourth industrial revolution and the digital doubling of everything. And generative AI is allowing us to create, essentially like a digital double for certain moments or instances.
Yeah, absolutely. Ray, your thoughts?
I think these types of personalization, optimization, however you call them, are good, and we should all be doing these things. But at the same time, I think, especially as like creative individuals that we are, I think we need to be looking for bigger opportunities. There's a lot. I mean, it's like, when digital became a thing 20, 25 years ago, and there was a lot of talk about optimization, like optimizing things. And I think those are necessary and fine. But I think, and especially like those of us who work with clients, and for us to be, as firms, professional firms, agencies, to be relevant to clients' business, like the optimization stuff, they don't need us, to think about how to optimize their operations. And I think we're still at the cusp of finding much more transformational use of technology and AI in a way that fundamentally changes the paradigm.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah, so I think what I try to focus on and what we try to focus on is, of course, these opportunities that can optimize their operation, and that's fine. And we need to be thinking about those things. But I like us to push ourselves to find transformative opportunities that, whether it's AI, we call it AI or digital or what have you, fundamentally changes the paradigm.
I fully agree. I mean, I had a conversation with, I'm going to name drop, Nick Law, and we probably spent a good chunk of time talking about pipelines and where does the content go, and then he kind of let us run with it, and then finally he spoke up, said, hey, we've been talking about connections and pipes and things, but let's not forget about the creative. Let's not forget about the sort of supremacy of the idea. Right. So I agree with you. Something transformative. Leveraging this technology. Certainly, we're seeing it in healthcare and pharmaceuticals and other lines that or industries that are.
Yeah, I think that the time that the phase, this phase that we are in, I sort of feel like the Napster phase of the music industry.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Totally.
So for those of us who are old enough to understand that reference, you're over 40 probably. It used to be CDs, and it was these pirated songs that you had to use like a lot of different tools to download. And then Napster came about, which wasn't quite legal. But that was like
It was very gentle.
It was very illegal.
yeah, it was a more optimized way of downloading and accessing music, but it wasn't quite kosher, right?
It was pre-legal.
It was pretty legal. Okay, yeah. And then Apple changed it to an extent with the music store, and then like things like Spotify came out, and then that's when the paradigm of the until Apple Music, iTunes, the paradigm was the extension of the last thing. And it was a hack over a hack over a hack. Like Napster was a hack, right? Yeah. And then iTunes made it a little bit more legit. Yeah. And then Spotify and things like that changed that paradigm into the streaming era. And I think that, so like right now, I'll give you an example of a hack. I'll shamelessly and shamefully say that like the use of ChatGPT, I think is transformative, but like the way ChatGPT is being used right now, I think is a bunch of hacks, right? Like hacking mostly. Yeah. So for instance, my nephew's school bans ChatGPT because it's a hack. Yeah. Whereas my other nephew's school doesn't ban ChatGPT, and they're hacking.
How are their grades?
Excellent, actually, excellent. Yeah, but until like schools and governments and companies find a legitimate use of things like large language models for education, I don't think we're there yet. We haven't found the streaming version of AI and LLM as it relates to say education. So I think it would take. I don't know whether it's a year or 5 years or 10 years, but I think it will take some time for us as a society to adapt to this new technology, because I think we are in this Napster era of AI.
No question. I think there's sort of like two paths to learning, or two paths to innovation, if you will. Like one is learning through doing and experimenting with new tools, and you get like these really linear learning curves, right? And you see these like on assembly lines, right? Like you just start, there's a suggestion box at Toyota that's so famous, and like every person on the line can make an improvement to it, and you see these like steady decreases in cost or steady improvements in efficiency. But the other way to like learning and efficiency is through R&D, and that's not to be neglected. And like for our business, that's about coming up with novel new surfaces and new interfaces that are powered by these tools. Some of them are out there and are pretty obvious. Virtual humans and these chat-based interfaces with characters and celebrities and things. But what comes next there is I think a really, really exciting space. And when we start hooking in tools like Firefly or what have you into those to power them quietly in the background, that's a really cool thing. And yeah, I mean, that's what the next web will be powered on, right?
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I wholeheartedly agree with everything you all said. I think that I think that we need to not always hold efficiency as the one metric to govern them all. If a business focuses on efficiency, they will get the optimization outcome that they're looking for. But when their larger offering or brand becomes irrelevant, because all they've been doing is optimizing, they have nothing to fall back on. So it's very hard to get out of a world of efficiency, because efficiency is something by definition that is measurable, and everybody wants something measurable. And it's not really possible to go and explore and take your time and figure out what the possibilities are and not really know how to apply them once you found them. And you can't put a timeline on it necessarily. And this is R&D in some cases. But it is absolutely necessary because all businesses will face disruption. And so all businesses need to figure out how to create disruptive change in themselves. That I think that's partly creativity, it's partly transformation, but it's a cultural problem, not a technology problem, right? Like there are a million applications of AI that will be awesome that are like right there, the easiest one, right? Clippy. Everybody's hated on Clippy for a long time, right? But Clippy's going to have his day.
Yeah.
He is, because Clippy is actually going to be completely useful. It's not necessarily going to look like Clippy. We may not recognize him as Clippy, but really, like, to have a little partner, because I'm still thinking about it as Clippy, who's like right there, who will answer your question in the context of what you're doing, with knowledge of how you're doing it and how you do it historically, is profound. It may not even be noticeable, a lot of the big changes, until you do that thing of like, remember when we used to actually have to think about that? I think a lot of the really big changes will be almost transparent, except to the people who are actually thinking about how to implement them. But we were joking earlier, like when I grew up and I needed to write a term paper for school, I had to go to the library and get the World Book, and it was probably a couple of years out of date. And so that was the huge amount of work just to get to, here are the basics.
Dewey Decimal System.
And the Dewey Decimal System, which I still don't understand. And but then Google comes along and you can take a big step forward because you get a whole lot of different types of information around your subject, but it's still pretty lossy. And now you get ChatGPT 4 or 4.5 if you're on the beta. And my God, the starting point is incredibly far forward. And like, this is why I hate the interdiction model with education. Like, if you just say, don't do it, like, how many times have power structures said, don't do it, and failed before we're going to learn the lesson that it's never going to work, right? Like, it's just a Cold War then, right? Like, okay, we came up with a new way to detect it, and we've come up with a new way to not be detected. So instead, like, fly, be free, and figure out how to really like turn it into something great.
So you heard it here first, Clippy.
The
resurgence of Clippy in a free and open way.
That's my platform.
Yeah.
I'm sticking to it.
I got it. So we're starting to kind of talk through some of these things, but one of the key questions that I heard in the SoDA GMM was, how do we operationalize what we're doing with generative AI? And that went everywhere from pitches to working on live projects, implementing stuff. So, what are some of the practical concerns that you're seeing? And we can almost treat separately the legal aspect of it. But what are some of the things, challenges that you all are seeing?
Speaking of challenges, I will first.
Okay.
Sounds good. Yeah, because I went first.
Friendly
Say
crowd,
first, and then I am finding clients that I work with, which tend to be more B2C than B2B. Well, maybe it doesn't matter, but they're being more cautious than I had expected, actually. Yep. And some companies are embracing it as an experiment internally. Some companies that we work with are explicitly banning the use of AI for two reasons. One is like legal implication for their business. And if somebody, in the company used ChatGPT or what have you, and produced, wrong information, that could have liable consequences. And or similar to the education point that I was making, I know one company and the CEO doesn't want the employees to rely on technology to think, so so I thought it
So
was
they're going to get rid of books too?
possibly. Yeah.
That ship sailed.
Yeah, that ship sailed about 500 years ago. 500 years ago. Yeah. So like I'm finding the clients being a bit more hesitant and cautious than I had expected. But the point that I think I'm trying to make is that the adaptation of AI might take longer than we think. In certain areas, I think the future isn't distributed evenly. So in certain areas, the AI is being deployed very quick. Like Adobe is is moving very fast in deploying AI. But in other areas, that I think it might take longer than we anticipate. Yeah,
Absolutely.
I think it will be uneven.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly well known that the copyright risk, the legal risks. I mean, I was in the sort of preamble to this. I never before, and I've seen round about 500 customers. That never before have I seen both a chief creative officer and ECD in the same room as in-house counsel.
Sure.
Right. So they're just trying to get into and get ahead of it. Certainly, we know those as risks. What are some of the other challenges that you guys are seeing in your firms? Micah.
I mean, legal is. I was in that booth right over there just a minute ago, watching a project get squeezed to almost oblivion because concern about training data, and not just concern, like knowledge of a problem, a specific problem with the training data, and to your point, you're seeing legal having a much more prominent role. Legal's got a huge role now within our agency, and luckily we have some great leadership there who are producing a lot of material that's helping with appropriate adoption of those tools. A nice William Gibson quote, by the way.
Oh yes.
But yeah, I mean that's exactly it. We're going to see different risk profiles across different clients, different levels of ambition. We're seeing certain clients who are like, we want to be very mindful about this. We want to sit down and go through and create an adoption plan and really work out what our new workflows are going to be. And then we have other clients who are like, nope, we need a demo, and we want to be able to walk the halls with that demo, and that's how we're going to create change within our organization. But I think in all cases, it's like, this is a journey that's inevitable.
Right.
That we're going on. That's all I got for right now.
Michael, how are things going for you in this?
Well, like I said before, I'm trying to build a culture of it. I want people to not have some kind of unconscious fear, anxiety, blockage. If you're an account person, if you're a finance person, whatever it is, like we are a team. What we do is a team sport. You can't have some people consciously or unconsciously terrified of what we're trying to do, right? And legal's a huge part of that, as has already been said. And I remember saying on a panel or on a stage at one point real early on in the early web days that were so fun, is like, we can talk about all the technology we want, but what we really need is a visionary lawyer. And I can say it again right now. It's the same thing. Like if we have lawyers and organizations like yours, thank you, who are working not from a risk mitigation point of view, but from an enablement point of view, which is not how many lawyers behave, particularly in-house. But that's what we really need to get through this and start evening out the distribution of the future, to beat William Gibson's quote to death. But I think for me, it's how do I get everyone comfortable enough with it that they're excited at the prospect? Because our job is to, at least at certain phases of what we're doing with our clients, is to show them what's possible. And I think that that's a hugely important role of an agency. We are not, the difference between an agency and a client corporation, whether they have an in-house agency or not, is that all corporations for the most part are kind of monocultures, right? They have a single set of things that they do. And the interesting thing to me, and what's always gotten me excited about being in the world of agencies is that by definition we can't be, unless you're one of those agencies that like we only do this category and we do it with this. That could happen. We're not that type. We thrive on diversity of opportunity, of industry, of technology, of of all the different types of people that we can bring into our community and their points of view and what they bring to the table, and all of that stuff is so incredibly vital in contrasting the monoculture. And I'm not saying monoculture in a pejorative way. I just mean like it's really hard to do your day job if you're working in-house at a client and stay abreast of all of these things and what's possible. And so, I think that's what I'm optimizing for right now, is really just, can we keep inspiring and showing that possibility? And some clients, like you said, are going to have a slightly more favorable risk profile, or they'll get so excited about a deal or idea and that they'll make it happen.
It's the great promise of agencies here, right? To navigate this sort of new field in generative AI. So yeah, happy to see that this is something that's still part of your culture, right? Let's pivot a bit. We've got 5 minutes left. So how about some inspirational stuff, right? Are there books, podcasts, mediums to follow in this space?
This time I'll let you guys go.
Oh yeah, I mean, I read.
He's waiting for one of us to say, well, follow Ray on Media. I mean, really do.
Yeah, really follow.
Ray's very
Yeah, you should. I mean, you've already outed me as an avid Economist reader. I think it's wonderful, albeit with the perspective.
But you're very positive for the typical Economist reader.
Economist reader, Canadian.
Doom and gloom.
Yeah, I also really like Casey Newton's Platformer newsletter. I think it's a really, really good overview of what's happening at a large level. I also went to elementary school with him. He was my dungeon master.
Right.
So that was pretty fun.
That was good.
Sorry. Proximity to fame doesn't mean anything, but he's a wonderful person and is doing great work, so worth calling out. I also read a lot of sci-fi and near future stuff. I feel like writers are people who help us imagine what could be, and that's worth reading. I think the most important book of our time right now is Ministry for the Future.
Okay.
Just gonna shout that out.
I just read it because he told me to read it.
It's good. And another one, which is also really interesting to me, is Electrify by Saul Griffiths, which is like an engineer's perspective on how to make transition to an electrified economy. It's really interesting because both of those books touch on the similar topics, because it's all about transition. And there's a lot of parallels with what we're going through as an industry, as we have these tools that enhance our cognition and change the way we work and change the way we have to emphasize different parts of our operations as creative people. And to be an ECD spending time with legal is a fresh new combination. It's exciting to think what that's going to unlock. Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Michael.
I don't have any publications, although I agree, and I was going to say sci-fi as well. It is the best way to fast track an imagining of a possible future, and it's fun to boot.
Yeah.
I spend a lot of time. I'm not a coder, but I know enough to fall into GitHub repos, and I think GitHub is a really exciting place to get inspired about stuff like this.
Yeah.
I have an example. Coming as the intense portion of the pandemic was lightening the first time. I don't know even how to describe these periods of time anymore, but a bunch of friends did this incredibly transgressive feeling thing where we went and did karaoke together in a small room, drinking and screaming in each other's faces. It felt like deeply wrong after 2.5 years inside, whatever. But and we walked out and we just had the best time, and we were like, we need to do karaoke all the time. And
After party.
yeah, and we tried to book the room again for after dinner, and couldn't do it. So I was like, how do we get karaoke? And I was like, I bet there's some really good open source karaoke projects on GitHub. And I fell down this thing, and I found one that was really good, and it had a cool feature because every karaoke song ever is on YouTube. So it could go to YouTube for the source. For any request that you would put in. So you don't have the menu of songs, you just think of a song and put it in. And then someone did, and I should note that this is entirely illegal and I'm not endorsing it in any way, but somebody did a fork of this project where instead of just going for the karaoke version of the song, it pulled the original music video of the song and ran it through a Gen AI algorithm to remove the vocals, and then pulled another open source thing. So one of the lyric libraries, but there was an open source project that somebody had done to sync lyrics with the time of the music. So we pulled from 3 available open source things, and suddenly, everybody wants to be a rock star if you're trying to be up there, or a singer of some kind. And you're like, it's not the beep boop MIDI version of Take On Me by Aha. It's like the real video sans vocals, and you're singing along with the band.
Cool.
And this is a few people who don't know each other had produced a bunch of things, and then a few other people got inspired by them and hacked this thing together. And I thought, that's the best use case for AI I've ever seen. And I still believe that.
Okay.
But that's the kind of stuff, it's what people choose to spend their free time on is a much better place to look for inspiration than pontificators and pundits.
I'm sensing a GMM activity next year.
Oh, that's a really good idea.
Okay, well, we're running out of time here. I do want to share a few things. So thank you all again for joining us today.
Thank you.
It's been a fascinating conversation. Really appreciate you guys diving in and really sharing some of your personal views on this. So thank you, Ray. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Michael. Everyone, let's give it up for these guys for taking the time. Thanks so much. And it's an absolute honor to partner with you guys on this. So thank you. So what's next? So we'll be back on November 30th, 12 p.m. Eastern time for a conversation with Stupid Studio. It's a certified B Corp SoDA member agency out of Copenhagen, focused on creating positive impact. So we hope you will join us back there on Creative Cloud LinkedIn channel, November 30th, 12 p.m. Eastern. Thanks so much.